start over again. Notice is hereby given that a special meeting of the Transactions and Use Tax Citizens Oversight Committee is hereby called to be held on Wednesday, December 11th, 2024 at 5 o'clock in the Port Hueneme City Hall Chamber located at 250 North Ventura Road, Port Hueneme, California. Said special meeting shall be for the purpose of conducting business in accordance with the attached agenda. So I'll call to order.
Roll call?
Roll call.
Okay, I'll be handling roll call today. Member Diaz. Here. Member Villanueva.
Here.
Member Villanueva is absent, correct? Yeah.
She may come later. She comes late.
Member Vic.
Here.
Vice Chair Williams.
Here.
Chair Scrivener.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, apparently there's no public comment unless anything been submitted to anybody that we, okay.
No public comment.
Okay, consent calendar. All matters listed in the consent calendar are to be considered routine by government body and will be enacted in one motion in the form listed. There are no discussions of these items before governing body votes on a motion to adopt. Specific items are removed from the consent calendar on separate motions. So we basically have the minutes.
Just the minutes, yes.
Hi, welcome.
Okay.
And I'll
There she
note for the record, Board Member Villanueva is present, so all 5 members are present.
Okay, so do we need to take a vote on this?
Yeah, just
Minutes.
yeah, just yes, a motion and a vote, please.
Do I have a motion to accept?
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll
Second.
second.
Thank you. All opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, business items. Initial Measure U Committee review and
Chairman?
feedback.
I just wanted to let you know that we have a special visitor here today.
Oh,
Oh,
congratulations.
congratulations.
Congratulations. So the record will reflect a 6th board member.
You only get one vote, though.
Still.
Okay, so we have our chart up in front of us here, the Measure U actual expenditures in fiscal year 223 and 24.
Yes, and I'll give a brief report. We have 2 items on the agenda today, and both are we'll try to keep them simple, brief, but obviously we'll answer any questions. Really, today's kind of the meeting to set the stage for the next year. I think we've talked a lot over the last 18 months about the goal we've all had of Measure U committee being ahead of the game and not simply approving past information, but actually being proactive and being able to preview the information and provide guidance as part of that process. And so today's agenda is actually with that intent. We're looking forward to next year. The first item is kind of getting general big picture guidance from the committee as we start our budget process. We talked about, December's kind of the calm before the storm, and then we really usually we start right about now with really starting to put the budget together and starting to get an initial draft of the budget. And so we talked about, well, should we come to the committee in March and come with a proposed budget? Or for the first time this year, we said, let's actually come to the committee now and say, as we're starting to put the budget together, we want to make sure we're going in the direction that the committee wants to go in. And so, rather than bring a document and have to work backwards, let's actually get some guidance moving forward. So the point of this business item, initial Measure U committee review and feedback on priority categories, is very high level. It's essentially what we did was we looked back at the last 2 years, and this chart shows the last 2 years. and we looked at, okay, where have we prioritized, what areas have we prioritized with Measure U funding, and in what amounts, and then looking ahead to next year and what we're expecting with next year, what kind of revenues we're expecting to get. Are these the same areas we want to prioritize next year, or do we want to, just kind of at a high level, do we want to make any changes, or are we comfortable with the same approach? And so this chart off the top shows, the 4 priority areas of Measure U funding. And over the last couple of years, we have, per this chart, prioritized I would say the public safety has been the highest level priority. You can see per the chart that in 2023, that was about $1.6 million of, generally, $3 to $3.5 million total. So that's about 1.6 million, or about half of the funding goes to public safety. And then you can see streets and maintenance gets about maybe a quarter, maybe a little less than a quarter, $700,000. CIP has gotten got about $700,000 2 years ago, but
What does CIP stand for?
CIP is capital improvement projects,
Okay.
and so it's a little complicated. We try to really keep these simple, but inevitably some things get complicated because capital improvement projects include projects that also are in these other categories. Right. So it's kind of like double counting, or maybe double counting or the opposite. But a CIP, the reason why the CIP increased so much, where you can see from the first year to the second year that it had the biggest increase, was because of the Bubbling Springs Park project. So if you recall, last year we came to the committee and we said, the Bubbling Springs Park project is over budget, and we had a long conversation about it. Does this fit is this a priority? Is this something that the Measure U funds, that you would support using Measure U funds for? And so the good news with that is we're on pace to finish the project in March-ish. But we've actually kept everything on pace. We are on schedule as of right this minute, even though just little off the point, but that park is right next to that creek, and every time we dig, we hold our breaths because you don't know what when you're going to dig and the creek starts bubbling up or anything like that. But we've been able to keep it on pace. But so that's due to be done in March. So this chart shows that had a spike, but I think that was a 1-year situation because of Bubbling Springs, and we would anticipate that would start to drop again this year, and that it would be sort of deprioritized again. Yes.
So as I recall, when we did an audit and found out where all the money had gone, over the past several years we didn't have any access to. Yeah. We had about $1.7 million left over, and it seemed like a worthy choice to put that towards the capital improvements in the parks, which I think we're all pretty happy with. Yep. And I don't anticipate us spending, another $15 million more on any parks anytime soon.
Not anytime soon.
Unless the fear gets
2040
knocked
maybe.
down and whatever. But
yeah.
So I think that's a one-time spike.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, where are we on budget with the park? It seems like anytime we do construction, it always runs over. So
well, we're on budget with what we, if you remember, that conversation was us coming back and saying we need to be realistic about the budget. I think the initial budget estimate was $9 million, and we were, we had the conversation then. We called all the contractors in, and just my conversation with them is, if you put an estimate together for $9 million 5 years ago, it's not $9 million anymore. And so we came back and we revised our estimates, and we came back at 15 million, and right now we're right on 15 million. So the positive is, I think, instead of waiting to be kind of, to get reality thrown at us, we actually proactively, came back and said we need to be realistic with this budget. So we're right on pace with that. We're on pace with the schedule. We're on pace with the budget.
So it's actually working,
Yeah.
sticking within that.
Yep.
Okay,
And then
great.
if anybody saw last week's council meeting, the Little League was here, and we're finalizing all the agreements for them to actually be able to start playing again as soon as it opens. So I think we're kind of on schedule with where we need to be with that. So that was a 1-year spike. It won't be that way. Well, we don't anticipate and we don't actually propose continuing at that level. And one of the next slides will show that number coming back down from 1.7 back to about the original number. I think it's the next slide after this. That one, yeah. So this is, as of right this minute, based on the projects that we had proposed to the council, like for our capital improvement project plan, these are the projects scheduled for next year. And then these are the ones, well, they're the projects scheduled that would use Measure U funding. And so the number drops back to 836,000. So the CIP, which became the second largest chunk of funding for Measure U, it would go back down, which we would anticipate then would allow for some of the other areas to be funded. But so the list of projects for 26, I'll just explain briefly. The $194,000, every year for 5 years, we had a parking lot budget to where we divided out all the parking lots we had with the idea of having all the parking lots maintained and repaved. And so next year would be some of the beach parking lots, the library, which we had started to complete this year, but when they closed, we put it on hold till their construction's done. So that would be next year, and then some parks, parking lots, like the Bubbling Springs Park parking lot, for example. So that'd be 194,000 of that 830,000. Pedestrian lighting at Bolker Park, $50,000. The lifeguard building, roof repairs at Wainimi Beach, $35,000. Miranda Park building engineering and remodel, $45,000. That one I just have to be clear with everybody though. This is that building in Miranda Park that really the goal will be to bring that back and find some use for it, but the $45,000 is what we estimate just to do the engineering. And so the project itself, like the next year would be the development of the plans, but the project itself wouldn't be completed next year. It's going to be significantly more.
The 45,000 is just the paperwork, basically.
Yeah, and then the designs and figuring, like, coming up with our designs and what we want to do with it. So it's a good start, but I know that one, a lot of people have ideas. We've been approached by a lot of people who go like, hey, let us operate that building and let us do something with it. And it's like, it needs significant repairs before we're able to do that. So and then a Pearson Road storm drain. And storm drains are one of those things that aren't glamorous. So a lot of times cities cut those. And but I try to remind everybody, like, that's the kind of stuff that then when you need them, you regret cutting it and you don't want to get into that situation. So you can see that's a big chunk of the funding, $337,000, but they're important. They're not glamorous, but they're important. And then we have $25,000 identified for electric vehicle charging stations at the beach. And then $150,000 for, it's actually emergency vehicle preemption traffic signals. And that's the system where the emergency vehicles can actually change the traffic signals when needed. So that's right now what's scheduled. And so if we went back to that chart, for example, back one more slide. So for CIP, again, that spike, it would drop back down. Like what we're expecting for 2025 is that category is going to drop back down to that 2023 level. And that was just a 1-year increase because of the Bubbling Springs Park project. And so most of the other categories are pretty consistent. Like streets and maintenance didn't vary much. Parks and Rec varied a little bit. I would say both dropped a little bit, mostly because we allocated that funding to the Bubbling Springs Park project, so that impacted some of the other areas. But they've been pretty consistent, and so and then the next slide, please. And so we looked at next year's estimate, and let me give you a little bit of information on that. Is what we base how we come up with this number that we estimate that Measure U revenues will be $3.1 million next year is the city actually has a contract with a company called HDL.
Right.
And HDL's, they're the kind of the standard. Most cities contract with HDL, and their expertise is sales tax analysis and property tax analysis. And because they contract with everyone, they are pretty good usually at anticipating what's going to happen with sales tax and property tax. And so for us next year, they anticipate our sales tax is going to be pretty flat. We don't expect a lot of growth next year in sales tax. And really mostly that can be attributed to the cannabis tax. We don't officially have a cannabis tax, but the cannabis revenues that we receive. And so if the cannabis revenues drop, then our sales tax drops. And just with the neighboring cities continuing to open more and more cannabis dispensaries, we think that is just going to keep being a pressure on us. So the revenues for next year are pretty flat. We've been at about $3.1 million last year and about $3.1 million this year, and we expect to be at about $3.1 million next year. And so that's where we start on this chart is, assuming that we expect a $3.1 million revenue next year, then we basically took the averages from those prior charts and we said if it's $3.1 million, that would be this many dollars in each of these categories based on the averages. So $1.4 million for public safety, $488,000 for streets and maintenance, $343,000 for parks and rec, and $836,000 for CIP. And so that's essentially when we start with the budget and we have to make assumptions about, what areas we need to fund at what levels. This is what we would start with based on kind of the history of the Measure U committee and what's been approved. And so the point of the item is to basically lay that out and then ask for feedback of, is that a good starting point, or is there an area that the committee would want to focus on more so than others? And if you can go back one more time, it ends up the final numbers end up pretty comparable to that 2023 actual, but the biggest change from 2024 is the CIP dollars go down because of Bowling Springs, but also the public safety dollars would be actually a pretty significant drop from $2.2 million of Measure U to I think it was about $1.43 million is being suggested. So that's probably if I had to anticipate what the biggest question would be, it would probably be, or maybe the biggest discussion point would be, I think the other categories are like fairly stable, or there's a good reason why it's not with the CIP category, but I think it's that public safety category. Is that the level of funding that the Measure U committee would want to allocate, or this year it was significantly higher, 2.2 million, I think it was. So, is that an area that the committee would want to look at prioritizing more than just based on the average in the past? So that's, again, it's high level. It's sort of, kind of tell us if we're going in the right direction, because now we're going to kind of get into the nitty gritty and actually go through line items and try to, kind of allocate these dollars into the budget. And so we're just looking for that general feedback.
So did the federal grant that we got for the project, did we meet the deadline so we got all the funding from them?
So Angela gets to brag that she opened a $6 million check this week.
A lovely $6 million check.
And so that one I want to give credit because I'm not confident right now that with everything going on at the state and federal level that there may be grant impacts. Some of the grants that have been issued in the past could be pulled, could be canceled, or even dollars that have been promised could be pulled back. So we made sure that we build everything as soon as we did it on the project, we build it and we got the biggest chunk of the money in. So that was good proactive work by our finance department. And so for us, at this point, I think we've got almost every dollar from the federal grant, right? I think there was like maybe like
Yeah.
less than $1 million left or something
Yes.
like that. So we've been able to get that done before there's any talk of pulling grants back or anything like that.
Well, that's great. I had heard some cheering over this way. I wondered what it was.
So.
Must have been the alpha humble.
Yeah.
Okay. It is. It's just me.
Yeah.
I just need to crank.
Yeah,
up
we
my
don't
volume.
get you get used to seeing bigger numbers, but we don't see $6 million checks very often. So
Okay.
that was a nice
Also,
one.
I noticed that we're putting electric vehicle charging station,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to understand the strategy there. I don't pay any money for a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we holding those folks out? I have an electric vehicle, but I don't need an electric vehicle station around here. So what's that about? What's the strategy? Is it a moneymaker?
No, it's not a money maker, and that's a big question that you could get different answers from different people on. But I'll tell you the best answers that I've heard is when electric vehicle chargers were first becoming, our electric vehicles were first kind of becoming, more popular. A lot of cities adopted like policies or statements that because of the environmental impact, positive environmental impact of driving a zero or low emission vehicle, that cities were going to be supportive of electric vehicle infrastructure and install electric vehicle infrastructure. A lot of cities, most cities, I would say, from about 2015 to 2020, a lot of cities that installed them actually installed it with free electricity, which was something that was not sustainable. And I was working in a city that had installed free chargers and had to be the person to break the news that you can't afford to keep paying for people's electricity. And so most cities at this point have now started to charge the cost of the electricity. But it's not a money maker. No, I'm not really aware of any city that actually like charges enough to make any profit off of it. But I think that the general, there's a lot to it, but I think the general response from cities would be, well, we adopted as a policy a statement that we wanted to support electric vehicles to reduce the greenhouse gases in our community, or something along those lines. So that's the thought. And so we as a city have plans that call for installation of chargers at certain locations. Interestingly enough, when you mention it, because that is probably the one project on this list that I did a little bit of a double take at, is that now home charging is becoming so prevalent that it's like you start to think, well, maybe those plans that we had initially are kind of outdated now, and so it's something we've talked about internally, and it's like, well, how many chargers do we need? And I don't think we need as many as we thought we needed. Because if you remember when electric vehicles first came out, it was like cities were trying to jam in chargers as much as possible, but a lot of people just charge at home now. So I think for us, we still have a couple in key locations. We have plans to put a couple at Bubbling Springs Park eventually. That was actually part of the grant. And so it's actually a grant requirement now that we had proposed it back in 2017 or whenever that grant application went in. And then we had planned to put a couple at the beach. And so we don't actually have a whole lot planned, but those ones are part of the plan. So we have them in our capital improvement project plan. So
I wonder why they can't be profitable. Because if you have an EV and you get some location, you realize you don't have enough fuel, you'd be thrilled to pay anything to charge them. So I don't know if the consumer would be hurt when they were told your choice is pay this amount or go home and push the car home.
yeah.
And so they would pay, I think they could be profitable if you can change the meters.
One of the challenges for cities to bear in mind, and you know, it's funny because I think you've identified like a what's it called, a gap in the market. Somebody out there can, you know, and I keep saying this, I keep waiting for a gas station to convert a couple of spaces to electric and, you know, and actually make some money off of it. But for cities, as a general rule, we are not able to charge for service we provide more than the cost of the service itself. And so cities, we really can't make profits. It's almost,
I got you.
you know, we're a public service. So
Can you charge for the cost of installing? I mean, if it costs $10,000 to install one of these things, can you put that over
you could
10
build that
years?
into the cost.
Yeah.
So since we can recover the cost of service, we could say we're going to charge for electricity. We're going to, you know, every person who charges is going to pay, you know, 0.0001% of the installation costs as well, and you could recover the costs back. So that is possible.
Over what time period? 5, 10 years? What is it?
Normally, when we do rate studies, we do most of them on like kind of a 5-year cycle. So probably that it's technical, and there might be some ability to adjust that, but normally we do things over 5-year periods. And as an example, we went to council last week to talk about our utility rates, and and the council approved that we're going to do a 5-year study for our utility rates. So we tend to do 5-year cycles.
Very good. Thank you.
I have one more comment. So with all the new building going in, there's not enough parking to start with. People don't have a garage to park in and charge in. So it really occurred to me, I've been thinking about this lately, what happens to people who live in apartments who can't just plug into their home thing? So they got to go find someplace to charge up. And
That's why we talked about this internally, and we were talking about, you know, well, we might not need hundreds of charging stations, but on the flip side, you know, some people's opinion we've heard some feedback where people go, hey, you know, it seems like people have enough chargers right now. But the reality is, our kind of opinion was looking at our community and the fact that we have a lot of like condo complexes, townhome complexes with homeowners associations. Some of those residents we expect some of the residents will need publicly available chargers. So that's where I think where we ended up is a pretty good compromise, where essentially it's a couple spots at the beach, a couple spots at the park, you know, so that when somebody takes their kids to the park for the day, they can plug in and charge. And then we have our 2 spots at City Hall. So I think, you know, it's kind of the balance of trying not to go overkill and take up all the parking spaces that would be available to the public, but ensuring we have enough that the people who need them have access to them.
So Surfside 1 condominiums, they have them now, and they're profitable on those. And so it serves their little community there. But also, if you just charge off of 110 volts in your garage overnight, you'll get enough charge to take you a number of miles. I mean, we're talking about, well, depending on the car, but I think you could get about a half charge. That would be about 150 miles. So unless you're commuting a long distance, that sort of maintains it for you just with 110 volt power.
So, the charging stations you're talking about at the beach, they'd be inside the lot, and so would people also have to get a parking permit as well, right?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and so it can be set up a couple ways, and I don't remember off the top what the plan. I think that the way it works typically is when they park at the charging station, they pay to park at the charging station, but they can only stay in that spot while they're charging, and then they need to move, and then they would have to buy a parking permit. And so the cost of the permit would be built into the cost of the charging.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And then, is there an indicator, so when the parking lady goes by, she can see that it's fully charged or something? I don't know how those work.
Yeah, potentially. They do.
'Cause, I mean, you go to the beach and you could forget, you
Yeah,
know, just
yeah.
like you forget you only have a 2-hour, you know, permit or what.
Yeah,
parking permits.
they're pretty fancy now. There's things they have. Some of them will have lights saying that they're fully charged. You know, they all have screens that will say whether they're charging or fully charged. And then a lot of them too now. I think the ones we have at City Hall do this. If you're fully charged, it'll actually email you and tell you or send you a notification on your phone. You know, your car's ready. Please move it. That kind of a
Oh,
thing. So.
okay.
I
yeah.
know Tesla has a simple system that when you are full, they start charging you idle fees
That's probably something we
at
would do,
$1 a
right?
minute.
To encourage you to move your vehicle.
And so you get it out of there. You pay attention to it. So it's on your shoulders to time it.
That's a good plan.
Yep.
So I would like that for us. If it's idle,
Yeah.
charge them. Okay?
Yep. That's probably how we'd address that. You know,
Okay.
the concern is that, you know, people will figure out, well, if I park there and I put the plug in, then I don't have to pay for parking. You're probably going to end up paying more if you do that. You know,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
So as far as this project's concerned,
Mhm.
say 5 years down the road, are they still gonna be using these chargers? Is things going to evolve into something else that they're gonna have to pull these out and put in newer ones?
Yeah, that's always the concern with these, and there are like the two standards right now, and the ones we have are there's the Tesla standard
Right.
that is for Teslas, and then there's the one that's for everybody else.
Right.
The ones we install are the ones for everybody else.
Okay.
And both cars, both ways, you can get the adapter, so you could use the other one.
Right.
But cities typically don't install the Tesla ones because they're seen as just being exclusive and only
Right.
beneficial to Tesla drivers.
That's why,
so.
I'm just thinking, we're spending money on these,
Mhm.
and in 5 years, we're gonna have to put in something else,
Mhm.
because I think it's gonna evolve
Yeah.
that quick that we don't
Yeah.
get to.
Yeah, the positive thing about that is that most of the cost is with essentially like running the electricity there.
Right.
The units themselves are actually only like $3,000 or $4,000,
Okay.
and it's funny because we'll get people who will call us and they'll go, "Hey, I have an old unit. I'll donate it to you guys," and we kind of have to be like, "No, thank you," because
Yeah, we're past
because it's like the expensive part is the other part,
Right,
you know.
okay.
So for us, the biggest cost at the beach is going to be running the electricity out to those spots. And so then at that point, if every 5 years we have to swap the units,
Right.
it'll be a few $1,000s,
Okay,
but it should
okay.
be minor. So we have when we have all our master plan documents, and some of them include sort of the plan to get the infrastructure out there.
So I don't know if there's a consensus, but we can talk about this. It seems like if we can build the cost in of paying for this into the user fee.
Yeah.
That way we're not subsidizing anybody, and the money's there to swap it out the next time around.
Yep. I think I'm hearing that. Yeah, and I think
I don't
that's
know if everybody
in
else
line
feels
with
the
what
same.
No,
we're
I agree.
Like
thinking.
that
I
dollar a minute.
Yeah.
to give them to move, so they
Yeah.
just sit there.
Yeah, exactly.
I have another thing I'd like to discuss here for a second on
Sure.
the capital improvement. We need a traffic light at Lido and Channel Islands Boulevard. I have a rental house over on Bolker, and I've had a lot of experience there. It's next to impossible to get out many times on Channel Islands Boulevard, and there's a series of wrecks there that happen all the time. I think the people coming out of Wainimi Bay are also kind of in a situation. So what's happening is, I've lived here a long time. Channel Islands Boulevard used to be, you could play hockey out there, and now it's a constant. We've got the traffic speeds down, but
Still a steady
there's all these
stream.
new housing developments going in. This whole thing at the harbor,
Yeah.
there's going to be lots more traffic going there, and
Yeah.
that's a particularly dangerous area for. At one point, there was like a wreck or two a week over there. I'm looking at what insurance company should pay for a light there because it would save them some money. It
Yeah.
was, it was pretty bad. I haven't been over there much recently, but
Yeah.
I'd like to throw that out as maybe a potential capital improvement. I don't know what other people think.
Yeah, and we there was actually when I first arrived, I think we had 3 accidents in 2 weeks there, and for me it was surprising because a lot of people know I lived here for 10 years and then became city manager somewhere else. And so then I moved there and then I came back to work here, and now I need to figure out how to move back here. And so, so I had lived here and I never thought of that area as particularly dangerous.
It wasn't.
And I came back and we had 3 accidents in 2 weeks. So we did, we went out, we restriped, we added the keep clear area, and we lowered the speed limit. So we did a few things in it, and it's definitely, we aren't getting 3 accidents in 2 weeks anymore, but it's an area we get a lot of questions about and we hear about. So
So has there been a study? Have you seen the difference with lowering the speed limit? It's
yeah,
really a
we've definitely
source.
seen an improvement since then, and we've seen an improvement. I think to member Scrivener's point is one little like fact to keep in mind that that I think we almost like all like naturally know, but we never talk about, is that intersection of Channel Islands and Ventura is actually one of the busiest intersections in the county. I think it's the number 2 busiest intersection in the county.
The what?
The intersection of Channel Islands and Ventura,
Is what?
second busiest intersection
Second
in the
busiest,
county.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so so we did those things. It's definitely made a difference. Like, we haven't had the accidents at nearly the same rate we were having before, but it is a kind of a area for us that we're continuing to watch it and like we know we might need to keep adjusting if it just keeps getting more and more busy, you know. And so there's a couple things like Mr. Scrivener mentioned. There are plans to do something big at the harbor, and if that happens, that could bring more traffic. I'm not holding my breath on that one because I think there's been plans to do something big at the harbor for 20 years now, but
It doesn't look like a good idea.
yeah. The idea that they picked it surprised me. So I guess we'll see if it goes anywhere. But so that's an area. I think that's an area that we will continue to watch and keep an eye on. And I think at this point, with this being like the high level discussion, it's like, I think it's appropriate if you want to give some general areas to focus on like that, then we can kind of take it back and try to figure out how we can build things in and you know, kind of start planning for 'em.
So can I ask, how do people feel about the balance of projected income for different categories?
Go back to the last slide.
So with a, what did you call it, a flat revenue
Mm-hmm.
projection for this year, and looking at the lower proportions, how is that going to, because for me, public safety is the biggest priority. And I think we've done a good job for them so far. How is that projection, whatever that amount is you've projected for this
Yeah.
coming year for them, 1,431,000, how is that going to affect their overall budget? Is that,
Yeah, and you know, one thing I didn't say, and I think it's essentially where you're going, is, you know, if our sales tax revenue is flat, it's going to be tight this year
right?
for us as a city. Our budget was very tight last year. We were essentially we cut $3 million out of the budget to stay balanced last year. And looking ahead, if you're looking ahead and you're expecting your biggest revenue, sales tax, to stay flat, but we all know costs are going up right now, and inflation and everything, we expect costs to go up. Let's say conservatively 5%. Well, you're starting with a 5% deficit. So we do expect the budget to be very tight. So I think maybe the best answer to, I think, where you're going with that is that if public safety is the priority for Measure U, that would be like a perfect example of the feedback to us, because then we can make sure when we're doing the budget that we make that the priority for Measure U. And so, although it's hard to get into the weeds with that right now because you only have a chunk of the budget in front of you, not the whole thing, I think it's going to be very tight. And I think that would be whatever, maybe a good way to approach it is whatever is the priority, Measure U identifies that, and then we'll make sure it's the priority. I think that's kind of the high level guidance at this point. So.
Priorities, what do you think?
I think we've seen that this looks sort of like a standard, other than this one change we had in CIP that, but we knew that was coming. So that looks like a good distribution between the 4 different categories.
I also agree. I believe it's fair, and I agree with public safety being the top priority.
Okay.
Yep, the way they're prioritized right there, you can see that that's the route we should be going.
I feel like since you've come on board and the new chief has come on board, we've had kind of some remarkable changes in the whole public safety thing, which I'm very grateful for. I think everybody I talked to is pretty happy with, and if we're not safe, nothing else matters. And I don't want to get overly paranoid and get, an armed police force with tanks and God knows,
Yeah.
some of these people have gone, but that's not the direction we're headed in. So basically,
The tank would be more than 1.4 million, unfortunately.
I think the public safety is the and real public safety, not stuff that's thrown in as puffed, which we hear all the time. But I think, from what I can see, the chief's decisions have been right on, and so I think that my personal opinion is that's the first priority,
Mhm.
and everything else falls beyond after that.
So I think the sense I get, and I guess I'll ask you guys to tell me if I'm just wrong, is as we start to develop the budget, that keeping public safety as the priority, we have sort of a draft, what we expect the budget to look like, but if we get down the road and we realize that, public safety is being shorted compared to the year before, then I think we have the support to make sure that it's the priority and that we're able to pay for what we need for public safety. And so if that increases a little bit and we take everything else down a little bit at that time, if that's what's needed, it sounds like the committee supports that. But we'll try to start with this and see where that gets us. And then I think with the process, we're planning to come back. The next item we'll get to in a minute it sets the meeting calendar, but we'd be coming back in March with the detail to it, and we'd come back and we can say if we were able to make everything work at these levels, or if we needed to adjust public safety up and everything else down a little bit. So, okay, great.
Okay with everybody?
Yes. In public safety, was that donut retardation of the curbing, was that in those funds? Is that?
Oh, the traffic donut pilot project.
Was
Uh,
that?
That wasn't this fund, actually. That we were able to do that with, it would have been our streets and maintenance.
I see.
And then we actually have applied for a grant for to hopefully cover the cost of that, and maybe if we decided to try a second location. We've had some requests from some neighborhoods for a second location of that. So that shouldn't come out of the public safety
I
fund.
see.
So
Well, that's been highly successful. If
Has it?
everyone's noticed, it's changed that a lot. And also places like right in front of the Surfside Seafood, I noticed they have moved over there. And so some curbing there would be a similar type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's low, I think it's low maintenance.
yeah, what we came up with was pretty low cost, pretty low maintenance. We wanted to test it, but we figured either it would not work and we'd be immediately asked to remove it, or if it did work, that people would move somewhere else and we would have to start looking at that area. So I guess the good news is it seems to be working, but they moved somewhere else, and so we're going to look at that. We've heard about Surfside Seafood as one area, and we've heard about on the other side of town near Bolker Park that there's another area that people are calling us about. So we've applied for a grant to see if we can get money to do a second test project.
That'd be wonderful.
Yep.
And it appears that the fire department's happy with that type of curbing. It doesn't slow them down. And it's also, it can be camouflage because it, especially like in front of Surfside Seafood, it can be put between the parking spots so that still people can come and go. No one's going to run over that little curb. If they do, it doesn't hurt their car. But it still keeps the, I don't know, crazy teenagers out of there. So the only thing is, if we could employ that type of curbing other places so that we get out of the race car syndrome down Ventura Road. I've heard complaints from the Navy base, the people that live over there. It's just horrible for them.
Ventura Road's a challenge. We brought back motorcycle enforcement, and hopefully you've seen them. I've seen them because I drive Ventura Road every day, but they are out there every day. And in fact, today we had our employee appreciation event, and when I came out, they had just pulled somebody over and were writing them a ticket right at Ventura and Park Road. So we've been using the motorcycle enforcement to sort of focus on Ventura Road, because we were just seeing a lot of people there just really speeding at a high rate of speed. So we're trying to prioritize that area for the motorcycle enforcement.
I think it's for the Navy-based personnel, which, they are good citizens. We want to serve them when they're here. I had some friends who just moved from the Navy base down to Magoo because it was just so loud. And it was the revving of engines.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was racing, but it was the revving of engines at stoplights. Yeah. And so that was sort of electric vehicles will get rid of that problem long term.
I've noticed a big decrease in the loud cars. I think the motors have put the message out, we're looking for you and we're catching some of you. So although it's still really irritating, I'm not seeing the same level of donuts.
Yep.
I'm not seeing people race on Ventura Road like I used to. And the loud, one of my renters in Camarillo, she bought her son a brand new BMW. 18, he's 21 years old. He went and popped holes in the muffler, so it makes noise. It's like, it's like, oh my God. What does the new BMW exhaust system cost? I don't know. But I think if we can get the police to start pulling people over for noise, it's one thing to get a ticket. It's another thing if they got to put $3,000 back in their exhaust system to pass so they can pop holes in it again and do it again.
I live a block off of Pleasant Valley, and when that light at Pleasant Valley and J is green, they just, it's loud. It gets really loud.
Well, that's the thing. It's funny because I think it's like everybody sort of thought that it was because they were going fast and racing, and then we slowed it down, but they're still just as loud.
They're just loud. They're just loud vehicles.
Yeah, and so that's the thing, and it's just people that have made their vehicles loud. So I know that I actually was out yesterday talking to the chief and our commander outside, and one went by very loud because we're right here on Ventura Road. Yeah. And so one went by very loudly, and we all looked at each other, and we were like, we got to, that's the next thing we got to get a strategy on. So I know that they're already talking about it. So.
Well, the one thing I have learned about our new chief is every time I bring something up to him, he's already like a month and a half ahead of me.
I got the sense that they've already started trying to figure out how to deal with it, but it was like we had to stop our conversation for the vehicle that was 100 feet away, and we all were just like, no, that we got to figure this out, so. Okay, well, I think with that general direction, that's very helpful to us, and especially I think that this is a good start, but the consensus that, and if need be, with the rest of the budget and how that looks, that we will make sure to prioritize the public safety aspect of it. So we can take that direction. I don't think we need a motion at this point. I think it's just general direction. And if everybody's ready, we can move to item 3. And item 3, we will need a motion for. But this is just part of, again, trying to be proactive, trying to plan, trying to make sure that that we're planning for the year. So we brought our proposed quarterly meeting times and dates, and we essentially tried to schedule it the last Wednesday at 5 p.m., except for in December, because the last Wednesday ends up being Christmas or Christmas Eve. And so in December, it'd be December 17th. That one we specifically wanted to call out because I know some people travel, around that period. So if any of these, but particularly December, if we needed to move it up even a week, that could be something we can do relatively easily. But as of now, we had proposed these meeting dates for next year, and that March meeting date would be the one where we'd really dig into the budget. So, if there's a motion to approve this schedule or a motion to change anything and then approve the schedule, that can be done at this time.
Would anybody like to change?
Motion to approve.
I'll
Is there a
second the motion.
All in
All-
favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And all opposed? All right, hearing none, the calendar is approved, and we will meet again on March 26th at 5 p.m.
I do have one question.
Yep.
We've had a change in the council members. Bobby Martinez has left, and Luis
Jess Lopez.
Jeff Lopez is in. So we're all appointed by somebody, so I assume that doesn't affect anybody except whoever Bobby, so who was nominated by Bobby?
Believe it was member Villanueva, I believe. And, but nothing's changed yet. The new council member will be sworn in next Monday. And then the item for them to either confirm or change any appointments will come to the council. I think we were planning January 6th at this point. So nothing, it's possible that, nothing changes, but we'll know for sure January 6th.
I guess he has the option of picking somebody else.
He has
but-
the opportunity to say,
Yeah.
I know I have the perfect person that I want to put on this board. That's
And I would like to
potential,
support
yeah.
keeping you here if you
Yeah.
want to do that, because
Yeah.
you show up and you do your duty, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be January 6th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll make sure the way it works is that, and it's not just this board, but basically all our boards, we'll bring a list of them with all the appointments to the council. We'll say we have a new council member, and then they get to propose any changes. Then after that meeting, we'll get in contact with anybody who is reappointed or not reappointed. So,
Okay.
so that would be January 6th, and then we don't have another meeting till March 26th. So I'm guessing by March 26th, we'll have known for quite a while. if
It
there
will
was
have
any
settled.
change. Yeah. So I'll keep everybody in the loop, though. After January 6th, we'll let everybody know if there's been any change or anything like that.
Okay, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
I make a motion to close the meeting.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get to use this. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.